All right, welcome everybody to this pop-up episode of the Gunner Technology Livestream. More of a free-form conversation about a tech topic. So today we're going to be talking about planned obsolescence in technology. And I guess maybe just to start, planned obsolescence, a definition of planned obsolescence is sort of the artificial uh, obsolescence of a of a product. So whether that is through making them last a shorter period of time, or whether that's through convincing people that they need to buy something new. Often products are still functional, but people get rid of them and buy something new. And the reason that's important with technology, and maybe I should tell my little anecdote again about the
Yeah, it's a
iPad
good
in the snow.
anecdote.
So we can start there and maybe dive in from that. It snowed, I guess for date's sake, it is the 28th of February. Um, on the 23rd of February, 2019, it snowed almost a foot in Las Vegas, where I'm located now. And I went out the Sunday after it snowed a foot, or 2 days after it snowed a foot, and I found an iPad on a bush just sitting there. It had been out overnight. There was snow on the screen. There was water on the peripheral keyboard. It was in horrible shape. I assumed it was bricked. I actually left it underneath a mailbox, hoping that someone would pick it up and deal with it so that I didn't have to deal with it. But it was still there that night when I went out, and I brought it inside, put it in some rice to try and dry it off, which is what everyone should do if they ever drop their phone in water or if it gets wet for some reason. It'll save devices like crazy. But I put it in rice, uh, took it out the next day. I was planning on taking it to the Apple store to see if they could salvage it in some way, or look up the serial number and locate the person whose iPad it was. But when I took it out of the rice, it just turned right on. Like nothing was wrong with it. There was maybe like a little bit of water in the top left corner, but even that I think was gone by the time I returned it. And when I turned it on, it was one of my neighbor's iPads. I recognized them from the photo on their screen. So I just took it over to them along with the keyboard that worked perfectly fine too. So I don't know what tech companies are going to do when they're making devices that last through hanging out in a bush overnight in a bunch of snow.
Yeah, and the answer has always been that we'll release. Well, it's always been that they'll basically like we'll release a new feature that you have to have, and that will
Right,
entice
right.
people to upgrade to have this new feature. But like the level of innovation has been dropping off precipitously, and so that's why like they're squeezing megapixels into cameras and stuff like that, because that's how they're getting people to upgrade. But again, at some point, even the most like highly technophile people are going to be like, my photos are just fine, man. My photos are just fine.
I
um
honestly, if you were to put a 3 megapixel photo up next to a 30 megapixel photo, I don't think I could tell the difference if I stared at it for a couple hours.
Only a photo sancerre could tell the difference. And if you
And
know what a
even
sans
he
if you
probably
guys know what a
couldn't.
sancerre is, then you're ahead of me, because I didn't know what one was until like 2 weeks ago.
So, short of photo sancerres buying new phones, and I mean, it's tough because there's only so much you can do with the device at this point. They've sort of reached maximum coolness. The only thing that I've seen recently that is actually different is gosh, is it Huawei uh
Yes. Yes.
released a tablet that folds in half. So
Right.
you can have a phone, or you can fold it out and have a tablet. And there's no crease on the screen. Obviously, that would kind of make it unusable. So that's pretty cool. I
And
don't know if I'd ever
and
want one or need one.
Samsung released the same thing, or they're releasing this a foldable phone as well. And yeah, I mean that's an aspect where, so for example, like I do drone piloting, right?
Yeah,
So I carry around a phone and an iPad in order, because in order to fly the drone, you need like a screen, and the phone is too small. So I have an iPad that I put on, an old iPad that I put on the remote control, so I can see what the drone is seeing. So yeah, that is something where, and again, if you look at them closely, they're pretty clunky, meaning they're pretty thick when they're folded up. So it'd be like
yeah,
having one of those old clamshells in your pocket.
yeah.
So
Or it's like
we're
your
not.
dad's wallet from back in the day. Your dad's wallet was like 10 inches thick, and he would just have it in his back pocket.
Exactly. So I'm intrigued by the foldable design, but they've got some ways to go before I'm ready to say that it would replace or replace an iPhone and an iPad kind of thing. But that's the thing, kind of thing that intrigues me, is because I don't want to carry around an iPad for
Yeah.
those few instances. The only thing that I'm thinking is, as long as my phone holds on, and it is, I got the battery replaced, and the battery life is great now. But see, the problem is newer apps use so much RAM, and most apps assume that the user will keep upgrading, so they don't optimize their apps, and so app use or RAM usage for apps goes like this. But like my device, RAM has stayed flat, so
Yeah,
I
that
can't.
RAM ain't changing.
Right, so I can't really keep like apps open in the background on my phone anymore. Like I'll put in directions for GPS, and then if I click over to another app, the device cleans it up and removes my directions, kind of thing. So that's kind of annoying. But the thing I'm looking forward to is I'm trying to hold on to my phone until 5G comes out. Not so much because 5G is so great. Like we're talking about gigabyte downloads instead of 100 megabyte downloads, but that is an actual improvement on something that I use. Like I use my camera almost never, but I use data all the time.
Well, and to your point, I'm sure there will be certain apps that will only work with 5G. So if your device doesn't have it, you're sort of out of luck. It is interesting though. That is one method for planned obsolescence, is not allowing people to upgrade or alter their device in any way. And I think Apple is probably most famous for this. Windows devices are a bit more extensible on an individual level, but Apple, and I think originally probably was in the name of wanting to control the device and ensuring that it sort of fit their vision and their design, and they didn't want anyone having access to that and being able to change it. But now it really is sort of a tool to not allow people to, say, upgrade the RAM in their phone or change the battery in their phone themselves, or make it that much more difficult to change the screen if the screen cracks, fix the touchpad or the little home button if the home button fails, the power button, the volume buttons. That one of the reasons people think that they added the I forget what the name of the screw is, but it's not a pentagram. That's a satanic screw, but it's like it's the 5-star screw or whatever. The reason that Apple added that, supposedly starting with the 6S, I think, is they didn't want, most people have a Phillips head screwdriver in their home, but a lot of people don't have that kind of screwdriver. So they wanted fewer people to be able to sort of tinker with the devices. They hope that people would just buy new ones, which less and less people are doing.
I never noticed that. I'm looking at mine now. Sure enough. Yep.
It's tough because, like, one of the ways you can sort of make up for the fact that people are buying fewer iPhones, and I'm looking up the numbers here. I'll sort of throw those in as I find them, but I think Apple's trying to recoup the losses in new device purchases by making the new devices themselves more expensive.
Yeah, I know. And I mean, at some point, like everyone has a price limit, right? And so as these prices go up and up, it's like, oh, okay, at some point it's just not worth it. And as the value or the price is outpacing the value, like they're adding price, but they're not really adding value. And so this is interesting. It goes into another thing we talk about all the time, is marketing. So Apple tries to use marketing to increase the value by making the iPhone a status symbol.
Yep, exactly.
And again, that only works on a certain number of people. It's not a ubiquitous strategy at all.
It's tough too, because you sort of reached market saturation. You're not getting the first time smartphone buyers anymore. I'm looking here, and 94% of adults in the UK own a mobile phone. So you're not
say cheers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. When Siri says pip pip cheerio when you ask her a question.
94%. I would have thought I was a little bit higher, but okay.
Yeah, I assume 6% of the UK is so old, and they're probably still like living in mansions. They don't realize that they haven't even heard of a television.
True.
They still have a telly. Excuse me.
They definitely haven't heard of a television.
Oh, what? Good God, sir. Pictures in a box. But looking up numbers here, iPhones, they expected to sell between 80 and 83 million. Last year, they sold 77 million.
Oof.
48% of people said they're planning to get a new smartphone this year, which is actually still nuts to me. But that's down 9 percentage points from the previous year. It's getting tough to convince people to spend $1,000 on a new phone when, like you said, the features that they're getting aren't all that different from what they get currently.
Right. I mean, right. Like it's weird because like you either have to significantly improve existing features or add new features. And think about like even facial recognition, which unlocks your phone, is not a new feature. It's an enhancement over typing in your password. It's not a new feature. The feature is the ability to lock your phone. Right?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
this is another way to unlock your phone. So it's not a new feature at all. It's just an enhancement on top of an existing feature. And if you think about it, it's been a long time. Like the last new feature that Apple added, and I could be wrong because I'm kind of just going off memory, is Apple Pay, where you can tap your phone and pay, which I use all the time because it helps me not carry around a credit card. But like other than that, they've all been like incremental improvements to existing features, which that has a lot less value than a whole new feature, like a whole new innovative invention, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, it's tough too because I think as far as planned obsolescence goes, it's always good to have a monopoly or at most sort of a duopoly, like or a doo-wop group who can sing about your product. Because it's tough. Like the early days of planned obsolescence, I think the big one was cars and Ford. Henry Ford was sort of a stickler for. It's sort of the European model of, well, this is good enough. I don't know what people want. It's a car, it drives.
Right.
It's perfect. It's done. And I think General Motors came along and they wanted a new model every year. General Motors is actually the one who started the brand new model every year model of car sales, and they ended up overtaking Ford in sales within like a couple of years. So this
Which is
stuff
just
does work.
which is just crazy because you talk about
Yeah.
like you talk about incremental improvements. Like think about obviously every say usually like 8 years a model will change their body style or their engine or something significant, but year to year it's the smallest things that are different. Like
And yet that's what's marketed and publicized
yeah,
as sort of the must-have killer feature.
like the thing I was talking about on the main episode today, my Ford F-250, which is an
Mhm.
old one, it's a 2000, and I was saying the reason I got it was because this was before Ford kind of was like, no one's buying new trucks, and that's because everyone loved this.
Gentlemen, we have a problem. Nobody's
Yeah,
buying cars.
and that's because everyone loved the 7.3 engine that was in that year model, which I think the
Yep.
7.3 ran from. There was a 7.3, I think, from 89 to 2002, but in 1990 something is when they actually went to the 7.3 that everyone liked. There was a different 7.3 before that. But then emission standards changed, and so the 7.3 was no longer legal in new automobiles. Thanks a lot, California. And so they were like, let's use this opportunity to make like a less bulletproof engine, so people are like actually like needing new vehicles, kind of thing. But here's the crazy thing: the rest of my truck,
Mhm.
the outside, it's all from a 2014. So it's
Just
my
built
point
around
is,
the engine.
yeah, exactly. So my point is like so few things changed year to year, especially in Ford. Like
Yeah.
basically with Ford, up until 2016, when they went to, or 2017, when they went to an aluminum body, you could basically replace your whole truck with just pieces from newer models. So not much change other than like the cosmetics. I
Right.
mean,
Right.
it's crazy.
Yeah, and I guess now, I guess even Ford making wholesale changes is sort of a sign of the times. But now that explicitly isn't the case. I mean, you can't pull components out of anything and put it in anything else, basically.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
It's tough. I mean, I'm not entirely sure what the technology companies can do beyond raising prices, making their devices worse, or which I think is what they're trying to do is the third option, which is convince people that they actually need to upgrade their device every 18 months or so.
Right. And I mean, it's funny because the real answer, and again, it just gets harder and harder and more expensive and more expensive. By the way, this opens up a whole other can of worms into the issue of stock buybacks, which I know is a big issue for you. And so basically, one of the things people say is as kind of a uh, pro argument for stock buybacks is that sometimes there's nothing better to put that money into, which to me, that's the most egregiously wrong argument in
Mhm.
there, because we're talking about a problem here where innovation is not enough. Like there's not enough innovation. So
Right, right, right.
the money that goes into stock buybacks should be going into
All of it.
innovation.
All of it should be going to R&D.
Right, all of it should be going to R&D, and you actually do solve this problem. It's expensive, which is why they don't want to do it, but you
Well,
actually
plus,
solve this problem.
the execs don't get to get out while the getting's good, and the stock
It,
price is still booming because people imagine, like, Apple's price is still high because people still associate Apple with innovative technology when they haven't innovated in technology in the better part of a decade.
Right. So I think we just solved the problem for these multi-billion-dollar companies is if you want to people to buy new devices, put your stock buybacks into innovation and R&D, and you'll solve the problem.
We're looking at you, Tim Cook.
Yeah.
Make it happen. It's tough. It'll be interesting to see, and it's. I mean, the interesting part is that you just don't know what the next killer device or killer idea is going to be. I mean, nobody could have predicted the iPhone before it came out, so that is the tough part, is that I'm not sure these technology companies are investing enough in finding that next big thing. And I think a lot of them are going to just keep hurting because they got nothing to prop them up.
Right. Well, and again, we ignore something else, which is again, I think a problem, and I don't know how to solve this problem because I'm not actually a big fan of patents. But what we allow people to do is we allow, because like you said, it's very expensive to put money in R&D because it's boom or bust.
Right. Right.
And so what Apple's doing is they're like, okay, we'll let Samsung figure out.
Were you
Uh,
going to say Fuji?
yeah, I was gonna say Fuji.
Fujifilm?
I was gonna say Fuji when I meant Highway, but then I couldn't pronounce Highway, so I just went with Samsung. So we'll let Samsung or someone else, because Samsung's a giant company, we'll let someone else figure out the next big thing in phones, and then we'll copy it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess
It's much cheaper to do it that way.
I mean, the trouble is when every company is thinking that, then nobody's actually doing anything.
Right. Well, and then it creates problems.
Except for the startups, the small startups who then get
Exactly.
either bought out or ripped off by these larger companies.
And that's what I was gonna say. That's the big problem in our software industry right now. Is especially I'm looking at you, Facebook. Facebook now is just like stealing everything from software. And the thing is now, the kind of thing is if like they just, I think copied the what is it, the what's that app where Patron app, is that what it's called, Patron? Patreon. So they just clone Patreon basically.
Did they
Facebook.
really?
Yes.
I mean,
Yes,
I know
they did.
Patreon's in a lot of hot water because I think they blacklisted. I don't even know. I can't keep track of the outrage, but I think they're in trouble because like they canceled someone's Patreon, and now everyone's leaving Patreon. So it makes sense that Facebook would. And we talk about this too. Facebook has the resources to clone Patreon in what,
Couple
5
months.
hours?
Yeah. I mean, so it's crazy because like it used to be startups. Like if you're a startup, it's you kind of have to hope that they come to you instead of just building themselves.
Yeah.
And if they do come to you, you better take their offer. Like
You have no leverage. You have absolutely no leverage.
No leverage. So if they offer you like $20 in a jawbreaker, you better take it.
And I guess that's to your point that because you can't patent software anymore, you're sort of at the whim of larger companies who can either replicate your software or hopefully, you know, throw some cash your way, a little something for the effort.
Right. And the thing is, it's weird because I really have a problem with patents in some respects too. So it's one of those things, I know it's rare, but I actually don't have the solution for this one.
Yeah. Maybe like shorter term patents.
Something like that.
So she can get like 5 years of good money out of it, and then it's sort of open to the public.
Something like that. It just my problem with patents is twofold: patent trolls,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
well, I guess threefold. It stifles innovation, and it still favors the big guys. It still favors the big guys. What it comes down to is who has the most money to throw at a court of law.
Yeah, I guess
So
that's true. You can sort of litigate someone into oblivion as
right,
opposed to buying them out.
right, right. Exactly. Exactly. You litigate them down to the fact where they're basically bankrupt, and then you just buy the patent from them in like asset forfeiture.
Well,
Like it's
maybe maybe next pop-up episode we'll solve the unsolvable problem of patent
yeah,
law.
I guess we can't
We'll
solve
give our
every
we'll
we
give
can't solve
ourselves
every
30 minutes
problem.
for that.
We can't solve the world's problems in one podcast. So we'll take it one podcast at a time.
Solving the world's problem one pop-up episode at a time. Gunner Technology. So I guess that'll do it for this pop-up episode of the Gunner Technology Livestream. Keep an eye out for future ones. We'll sort of continue to do them sporadically. There'll be little treats for you guys. I don't know if treat's the right word, but there'll be something. So we'll catch you on the next pop-up episode. See you guys.